Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I am going to be sharing a video all about potato side dishes. I honestly feel like you cannot go wrong with potatoes, so let's go ahead and get started and I'll show you these 4 potato side dishes. First up, we're making these super easy cheesy ranch potatoes. These are one of our favorites. I'm starting by preheating my oven to 350, and then I have 6 potatoes here. For this you need about 5 medium potatoes, but 2 of mine were a little smaller, so I used 6. You're just going to cut them into nice tiny cubes, just like this. Once my potatoes are all cubed up, I'm moving them over to a lined baking sheet. I just lined it with some foil. Over top of the potatoes, I'm adding about 2 tablespoons of olive oil, just drizzling that over the top. This is one of those recipes where the measurements on the spices do not have to be exact. For me, I'm adding about a half teaspoon maybe of each of these seasonings. I just add a layer over the top. I'm using salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, and paprika. The best tool you can use to get these potatoes mixed up and make sure the seasonings are covering nicely is your hand. So get in there and mix those together really nicely. And then you want to just make sure they are spread out in a single layer over the sheet pan. These potatoes are going in the oven for 15 minutes to start. Once the potatoes come out of the oven, you're going to want to make sure that you mix those around really good. Make sure nothing is sticking too badly. If you're having problems with them sticking, go ahead and add about another tablespoon of olive oil throughout your potatoes. Get them mixed together really good, and that should prevent them from sticking. Make sure you even the potatoes back out in a single layer before they go back in the oven. And once they're in the oven, they're going to go an additional 15 minutes. Once they are out of the oven for the second time, go ahead and mix them around one more time just to make sure they're not all stuck to the bottom. Once you've mixed them around, bring them all to the center, and then on top of these potatoes, you're going to add some cheese. I'm just using a mild shredded cheddar. I'm probably only using about a half a cup of cheese, and then this is going back in the oven for about 2 to 3 minutes, just long enough to melt your cheese. As soon as your potatoes come out of the oven and the cheese is nicely melted, you can drizzle your favorite ranch dressing over the top. With the cheese and the ranch dressing, you can honestly add as much as you want to. There's no specific amount, and then I just top it with a little bit of parsley to add some color. Here it is on my plate. As you can see, it's nice and cheesy and has tons of ranch on it. This is one of my favorite side dishes, especially to have with something like grilled chicken. I don't know, it just hits the spot. And if you're a ranch lover, you definitely cannot go wrong with these potatoes. If you were here for Sunday's video, then you probably saw a preview of these potato wedges. These Parmesan potato wedges are a super great homemade option. Getting started, we're going to preheat our oven to 375 degrees. I washed up about 5 medium-sized russet potatoes, and now I'm just cutting them in half and then using one half and cutting that into 4 wedges, just like this. As I cut the wedges, I'm going to add them right into this bowl. Once my wedges have been cut up and they are all in the bowl, I'm going to add about 4 to 5 tablespoons of olive oil. I'm just taking a spoon to toss these potato wedges in this olive oil and make sure they're well covered. For my seasonings, I'm adding in 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, 2 teaspoons of Italian seasoning, and about 1 teaspoon of parsley. Again, just using my spoon to mix this up and make sure the seasonings have covered the potato wedges. The last thing we're adding to these potato wedges is a half cup of shredded Parmesan cheese. If your Parmesan doesn't want to stick to your potato wedges, add a little extra olive oil and that should help. Over to my baking sheet, I'm going to add just a little bit more olive oil. I didn't have any spray, so I just used the olive oil. I'm dumping my potato wedges on here, and I'm just going to spread these out the best I can and try to add some of the cheese that fell off on top of the potato wedges. These baked in my oven for about 30 minutes. Here they are coming out of the oven. I just made sure that they were fork tender by poking it with my fork. And over the top of my potato wedges, I took a little bit of grated Parmesan cheese and just sprinkled that over the top. This is what they looked like on my plate. These, in my opinion, are best served with some ranch dressing to dip them in. And if you're interested in what I serve them with, the Parmesan chicken tenders, I'll link that video below for you as well. Up next, this recipe is so unbelievably simple. It's something my mom used to actually make for dinner. For this recipe, I'm using red potatoes, and you will need about 5 of these. Go ahead and get these cubed up, but they do not need to be super small cubes like the cheesy ranch potatoes. These ones can stay a little larger. Over to my stovetop, I'm adding my potatoes into some water. I had just put this pot on the stove, so it's not hot yet. You'll want to make sure you salt the water just a little bit. And you'll let these potatoes come to a boil, and they will cook until they are about fork tender. You don't want to overcook these because you don't want them falling apart, so make sure you keep an eye on them. Mine cooked for about 8 to 10 minutes once the water was boiling, just until I could get the fork through. I then went ahead and drained the water out, and to the potatoes you're going to add a half stick of butter. Just cover that butter up with the potatoes and let it fully melt. While the butter is melting, you can go ahead and start adding your seasonings over the top. These potatoes usually need a fair amount of salt, so I'm adding about a teaspoon of salt, a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, a 1/2 teaspoon of dried parsley, and about a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. The amounts on those seasonings are an estimate because I never measure. This is one of those recipes where you can add as much salt or pepper or garlic powder as you need to. Very carefully, you're going to fold your potatoes and butter together with the seasonings. These potatoes are a little bit delicate. Some of them will break, but you just want to be careful not to completely mash them. Here's what your potatoes will look like when they are all finished. Like I said, this is a very simple recipe. This can be served with so many different things, and it doesn't take a lot of effort to make this side dish. This loaded baked potato casserole is one of my husband's favorite side dishes. To start making this one, you'll need to preheat your oven to 375. You can either choose to bake your potatoes or microwave them, depending on how much time you have. I didn't have a whole lot of time, so I went ahead and poked some holes in my potatoes. I have about 7 small to medium potatoes here, and I'm just going to microwave these for about 5 minutes until they're fork tender. While my potatoes are cooking in the microwave, I'm going to go ahead and start some bacon. I have about 4 to 5 slices of thick bacon. And once you get your bacon done, you'll want to just crumble that up. And the last thing you'll need to prep is 2 small green onions, and make sure you chop those up pretty fine. Once your potatoes are done, go ahead and let them cool down for a few minutes. That way you can handle them and not burn your fingers off. I have a small casserole dish that is about 8 by 8 to 9 by 9 inches. I'm going to go ahead and spray that down with some nonstick spray. For the potatoes, I'm cutting them in half and then cutting them in half again, and then cutting them into smaller pieces just like we have in the previous recipes. Once your potatoes are all cut up, go ahead and add half of the potatoes into your small casserole dish. Go ahead and just set the other half aside for right now. To season these potatoes, I'm adding about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, and a 1/4 teaspoon of parsley. Before moving on to the next step, give those potatoes a quick little mix with the seasonings and then make sure they're in a nice single layer. Next, you're going to take about a 1/2 cup of sour cream and spread a layer of that over top of the potatoes. Next, sprinkle half of your bacon crumbles over. Next, you'll add about a 1/4 cup of sharp cheddar cheese and a 1/4 cup of shredded mozzarella cheese. At this point, I'm going to repeat everything I've done so far. So in this bowl, I had the other half of my potatoes. I went ahead and seasoned those with the exact same measurements as the other set of potatoes, and then just dumped them over the top. Then I'm adding another 1/2 cup of sour cream, and then you'll add the rest of your bacon. I did save a very small amount to crumble over the top. And on top of the bacon, you're going to add another 1/4 cup of each of your cheeses. Once you're done layering everything, this will go in the oven and bake for about 20 minutes. Once out of the oven, you can top with your green onions and a little bit of bacon that we saved. Here's what my finished plate looked like. While I was inside making the potato casserole, my husband was grilling up some steaks outside, and together these two make the perfect combo. I hope you enjoyed this video and found a new potato recipe that you'd like to make for dinner one night. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you back here on Sunday.